Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dreamleapers with Harriette Cole. I am so happy today. I have a very special guest, someone whose career I have been following for a very long time, and she never disappoints. She is, let me just tell you who she is. I'm going to read it so I make sure that I get it right. Her name is LaChanze. She is a Tony Award-winning performer and producer, and this season she serves as producer both on the 20th anniversary revival of Susan Laurie Park's acclaimed Pulitzer Prize-winning play, Topdog, Underdog. Have you seen it? Ooh, it's amazing. As well as Kimberly Akimbo, a new musical by Tony Award-winning composer Janine Tesori and Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright David Lindsay Abaire. Please join me right now in welcoming LaChanze.
Hi, Harriette. Thank you for having me on.
I'm so excited to have you. As I said, I've been following your career for a long time. You have been busy, right?
Yeah, a little busy. A little busy.
So what you have been performing on Broadway for, like 30 years?
Close to 40.
Close to 40 years. That's amazing. Yeah. What was the first production on Broadway?
The first production I did on Broadway was actually in a summer job that I did. I was in college at the Tropicana Hotel in Atlantic City. It was a show called Uptown It's Hot. And it was basically a review of the progression of Black music all the way back from as early as the turn of the 20th century all the way up to today. And there were some producers who thought it was so good. It was conceived by the amazing Maurice Hines, and it transferred to Broadway. And it was in 1986. I was in college, and it pulled me out of school to go do this job on Broadway. Got my equity card, got introduced, and
oh my goodness!
And the show closed in a matter of weeks.
But you got your foot in the door. And the equity card, excuse me, when you get that with your first production, that is so hard to get, right?
Yes, it is. But I was fortunate, but what it did was it introduced me to the world of musical theater. I was primarily a theater dance major.
Right.
I wanted to come and be, work with ALE or some of the amazing companies. But when I got to New York, I discovered that the world of dance, while it is so rich and powerful, it was limiting for me. I wanted to sing and act. I just didn't want to dance. So I found my home in musical theater.
That's incredible. And people enter in lots of different ways. It's talent, also who you know, and a little bit of luck kind of stirred in there too, right?
Yeah, a lot of luck. A lot of luck.
What would you say as you have been building your career, what was the first really pivotal moment for you?
The first pivotal moment that I acknowledge as being the moment that I knew that I had something, that I had chosen my path and that I had discovered my tribe, so to speak, was when I was a teenager. I was dancing in with a performance group called the Bowen Peters Cultural Arts Center, and it was a dance company that was out of New Haven, Connecticut, founded by Dr. Angela Bowen Peters, who's no longer with us, rest her soul. And she basically trained me so diligently that at first I thought, I can't do this. It's too difficult. It's too competitive. But she was one of the best teachers I've ever had in my life. And she sort of forced me to stay on my technique, learn what I needed to learn in order to be successful. And during those couple of years in the middle of my teenage life, I discovered that once I had trained and learned all that I needed to learn, that I was able to layer on my own personal approach to dance and my individuality. And Angela Bowen Peters said to me, she said, "You really are a performer. Wow. And this is where you are. And this is where your tribe is." And from that moment on, I never looked back.
The power of a good teacher, a good mentor, it should never be underestimated. Having somebody in your corner who tells you the truth and who encourages you
Yes.
matters so much. Who have other mentors been in your life?
I had an incredible voice teacher. His name was Mark Truitt. He also is no longer with us, but when I was working on a musical Once on This Island, it was my first leading role on Broadway. We had done the workshop, and then over the summer, I felt I need to really train my voice to sustain the 8 shows a week.
Right.
That could be, it's almost like being an athlete, because you must keep your vocal cords and your body in such great shape that I said, I need to go and get a little bit of extra training. So I was introduced to him, and I worked with him the entire summer. And by the time I got back to the show when we were going to open on Broadway, the composer had to raise my keys a full step because of how much my voice had grown. It had gotten higher and lower with the training with this incredible teacher. So I'm so grateful to Mark Truitt for really helping me find, in his words, the gold in my voice.
Which is something I was going to ask you about, just the 8 shows a week of Broadway.
Yes.
And I've talked to many performers who have been on Broadway who talk about you need the stamina.
Yeah.
You have to really take care of yourself in order to be able to physically do it. Yes. The voice too. I mean, what you're describing is, like you said, it's like being an athlete. What do you do other than working on your voice? How do you take care of yourself so that you are able to show up strong and clear every show? One of the
main, I want to say the key to having a healthy instrument, whether it be physically, vocally, mentally, spiritually, is rest. So I carve out at least 8 hours sleep for myself. Sometimes I can't get it because we're busy and we go to bed late, get up early. But my sleep pattern, my sleep schedule is down at midnight, up at 8, or down at 11, up at 7, down at 10, up at 6, depending on what I have to do. Because it's the only time our body really heals and rests and resets is while we're asleep. So sleep, I try to get as much sleep as I possibly can. And if I can't get the full 8 hours, I nap in the day. I find time to carve out a nap just to restore and recenter. We're so busy, all of us, and particularly in the days we're living in the information age. There's so much information coming at us constantly.
That's true.
Our phones and screens and news and 24-hour streaming programs. We're just inundated with distractions. So the only time our minds really shut off is when we're asleep. Or meditation helps as well.
Sure.
But sleep is, for me, lots of water. I drink an enormous amount of water.
That's good.
And I drink so much water that I always have to be, near a room with the white furniture. But
I'm so glad you're saying these. These are basic things.
They are basic.
People often don't think of. A lot of times when people are set to fulfill a goal, they think they have to work a gazillion more hours. And I'll sleep tomorrow. I'll sleep when I die. I hear people say that with a certain amount of pride in their voice when they say it, and it really is the opposite. That's true. You probably live longer and healthier if you get enough sleep, right?
Yes, our bodies restore when we rest. And that is, I agree with you. I hear people say that a lot. I'll sleep when I die. I can function on 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. Yes, we can function on those hours, but it's suboptimal. If we really want to show up in our absolute best with clarity of mind and skill and relying on our health. And the older we get, our bodies really need the rest because, we start feeling little creaks and things happening. And the more you rest, the more your body's able to heal. So I'm all about sleep and water.
Well, I sure hope people heard that, because I hear it. I'm not going to say that I get 8 hours every night, but I know that I need to. And this is a really good reminder for me, and I hope everybody in earshot of this conversation. LaChanze, you have done so many incredible productions. I just want to go through a few of them. Just highlights. Dreamgirls.
Yes, my first tour.
And Dreamgirls has remained iconic.
Yes,
You
it has.
know, what was your role?
Well, I joined the cast after the closing of the first show that I was working on in 1988, and the show went on the road. It went on an international tour, and I learned so much on that tour. I was, 21 years old. I was in this group with these phenomenal performers, and I was the understudy to Dina, the role that Shirley Ralph created,
Right.
and I was the understudy to Michelle as well. And these two roles, at being as young as I was, they just threw me into these roles and I understudy, and I ended up having to perform 2 weeks after I was hired in one of the leading
Oh my
roles.
goodness.
It was a challenge, but I was ready. I've always been very ambitious, and I pride myself on being prepared for every situation, because I believe that if you're prepared, an opportunity may come your way, and you need to be ready for it.
And being an understudy,
Yeah.
like you have to learn everything, right? Because
Yeah.
you have to be ready on the spot. And if you have two different roles that you're being understudy for, that's just way more work than who the principal actor is, right?
It's the most valuable job in the building.
Yeah.
Understudies and standbys are the most valuable members of cast. People don't realize, people think, oh, the star or the director, but the understudy or the standby, depending if you're someone who's not actually in the show, a standby's role is to just be in the wings, is challenging, because the leading actors, or an actor like myself who's working 8 shows a week, I have the rehearsal, the repetition. I can get in there and do it and rely on what I did the night before. Mm-hmm. The understudy has to be ready to hop on, jump in, get in the flow, and is expected to be just as good, if not better. So it's a level of talent and skill that sometimes doesn't get the reward or the accolations that I think understudies deserve.
And then the principal actor is not really trying to give the understudy a chance to perform either, right? They're trying to be on stage every day.
We're trying hard not to miss performances. But, as we've seen through the past couple of years,
yes,
unfortunately, due to the pandemic and COVID and everything, we've really had to become dependent on our understudies and our standbys. And honestly, they've been saving theater.
A very important point to note, because everybody is important who's part of a production.
Yes.
And many people don't have any idea what goes on behind the scenes, but that's one that's very important. Okay, let's talk about The Color Purple.
Oh, that was an amazing experience for me.
You played Celie, right?
Yes, I originated the role of Celie on Broadway.
And so bringing such an iconic book to life in a performance on Broadway, when, the stakes were high. They're always high, but I feel like they were higher for that because the book is so beloved.
Yes.
So stepping into it, originating that role, what was the mindset that you had in embodying Celie?
Originally, just like so many people, the idea of The Color Purple being a musical gave me pause, because I thought The Color Purple is my favorite book of all time. So I was going to audition regardless, but I did have a question about how is this going to be a musical? Because when you think of a musical, you think of joy, laughter, comedy, singing. And I didn't, in my mind, equate joy in terms of musicality with The Color Purple. So my initial reaction was, that's going to be interesting. But then I heard the music, and then I started working on the song. At the time, the song was called Dear God. And it was written by Stephen Bray, Allie Willis, and the late Allie Willis, God bless her, and Brenda Russell. And when I learned the song for the audition, I immediately identified with this character who was isolated, who felt alone, who felt that her only companion was God. And if you can reach and connect to that in your own spiritual self, as we all talk to God or whomever we identify as our creator, supreme being. Some of us that do believe, we're always in conversation with our supreme being. So I applied my personal relationship with my personal, how I feel about my creator to this role. And it freed me to be just as honest and natural and open and vulnerable that Celie is in that relationship. So I worked on that song, got into the audition, and just trusted that connection that I have with my own personal God and applied it to the role as Celie. And I just automatically felt that I could identify with her. And I also, my own personal life, not to say that every role that you play has to have some relevance in your personal life, but I ironically was raised with physical violence around me. And so I remembered my childhood witnessing the trauma of that and experiencing the trauma of that. And I allowed myself to tap into the vulnerability and the hurt and the memory of that for myself. And I applied it to Celie.
You know, as you say that, it reminds me of another production you did off Broadway, but that just you're bringing it to mind is the Vagina Monologues.
Yes.
I interviewed Eve Ensler, who now calls herself V, recently.
V, yes.
Yes, V. And what I didn't know was how much abuse she had suffered as a child by her father.
Yes.
And she talks about it very openly. And in fact, this is really what prompted her to do all of this work to support women all over the world who suffer abuse, which is it's phenomenal when you have suffered abuse to be able to survive it,
yes,
and then to work to help others. I mean, so when you mention that about just being in a space of violence, and you could bring that to this experience, I'm sure that's probably why people connected so deeply to you in that role.
I would imagine that my trusting and allowing myself to expose that deep part of my childhood was something that women and men and so many others resonated with, because the statistics are alarmingly high. But what we don't know but what we also know now is that so many people keep it to themselves.
Yes.
There's a lot of shame attached to it. And a part of my own personal coming to terms with the abuse that I experienced as a child, I allowed myself to sort of have a cathartic experience on stage as Celie. And it's very important to me as a Black woman, as a woman who has come from a very poor childhood with this violence and this intense childhood. It's important for me to show and be sort of a model, an example for so many other young girls out here who may have experienced this, that you can continue to own your own life, be in charge of your life and succeed without letting the trauma be your label. You know, you can set it down. You can let it be in your past and take what your own personal joy and journey for your future really is and claim that and not let that be your identity. So I personally like to be, not only am I doing it for myself and for my daughters and for the girls in my life, I just think it's important to be a model for other young women out there who also may have experienced this, to see that you can still thrive and survive it and thrive in spite of it.
It's so powerful. And you know, I hope that people are taking it in, what you're saying, because when you're in the midst of it, and we know right now there's so many people who are fragile emotionally and suffering in all different kinds of ways, and it is possible to break from that. It is possible to let it go. It may not feel like it, but it is. We have lots of examples of people who have been able to survive and thrive and have joy in their lives, regardless of I mean, look at Mandela. Come on.
We have countless examples, countless examples in our community. And one of the main, and I'll also add that I can't carry that stuff around with me. Truthfully, if I'm trying to go somewhere in my life and do something more successful in my life, if I'm carrying that trauma around with me, it never really leaves you. But if I'm making it a part of how I present myself in the world, it's too heavy. It's hard. I can't go forward. If I'm carrying a trunk of trauma around with me everywhere I go, I'm going to walk slower. I'm going to not be able to go as fast. I'm not going to be able to attain my goal if I'm carrying this. So I work all the time on letting go, and making room for the joy. If my head is filled with, that was wrong, they shouldn't have done that to me, blah, 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 blah. If that's what's swirling in my head all day long, where's the room for, I have a new story I want to write. I have an opportunity to focus on my health. This is an opportunity. Your creative ideas that you may have to lift and esteem yourself. There's no room if in your mind you're swirling, thinking about what happened in the past, or being threatened by something. Let it go. That's all I want to say. Just let it go. Get some support. It's very important to have someone to talk to, whether it's a medical professional, but our mental health as a community needs to be, the stigma of mental health needs to go away, first of all. But it's important to have the confidence or the comfort and security of just letting go of the bad and making room for the good.
And when you talk about the tools, so thank goodness the stigma of therapy is being lifted at least a little bit in the Black community, for people to say, it's a good thing for me to get professional help if I need it. And also, I heard you mention meditation earlier. I've been practicing meditation for at least 30 years. And I find that to be so important.
Yes.
In grounding and also releasing.
Yes.
And people, you need something. I don't think it's possible to live a healthy life without some kind of spiritual connection. I don't know how you do it.
And people have different ways of expressing spirituality. Some people pray. Some people are religious. Some people go to church. Some people worship in their homes. My Muslim friends, they pray several times a day. My Jewish friends, they pray at different times. My Yoruba friends have certain times of prayer. All religions have their way of praying. But in my opinion, however you choose to enter your spiritual world, it's just important to be consistent.
You make me smile. I just wanted to share the, we've been having a very thoughtful conversation.
Yes.
And I especially like, as the year transitions, from one to the next, what are we thinking about? What are we spending our time contemplating? What is important in our lives, and are we doing what we're supposed to be doing? And how do we, get to where we want to be? And I feel like that's kind of what we're talking about, the soul and the self and creativity all at once. Could you talk to us a little bit about your journey to self?
Yes. I'm just going to say I've always been a spiritual person. I'm the oldest of 7. I was born to teenage parents, and my parents were very young. My mother was 15 years old when I was born. My dad was 17. And that made for a very interesting childhood, meaning my mom wasn't more like a nurturer. She was more like a sister.
Right.
And so my siblings and my siblings referred to me as mom, because my mom was a teenager and she was doing things that teenagers do and young women do. And I was always left holding a lot of responsibility. And so I've always had this connection to myself spiritually, because it was what I could rely on and what I could trust. As a child, I didn't know what the presence was, but I was always in conversation with the presence. Some people say my my invisible friend or whomever. But for me, it was always a sense of the presence of our creator. But during the quarantine, my life, all of our lives, we were just going, treadmill. Nothing was going wrong. We were just all moving. And when the pandemic happened and we had to stop, and everything had to stop, it was devastating for my community, my commercial Broadway community, or theater at large, for entertainment at large. It was devastating because we had to stop everything. And that included getting a paycheck. That included being able to exercise your art. That including being able to sustain your lifestyle. So it was shocking for so many of us. And as we've seen, there are people that are still struggling emotionally with mental health issues because of the pandemic. But the one thing that it gave us, and the one thing that it gave me, is my time and the understanding of the value of my time. And that I usually just I say yes. That's my general state, is say yes. If there's an opportunity in front of you, it is in front of you for a reason, and you should say yes. What the pandemic and the quarantine taught me was to be a little bit more specific with what I say yes to, and to prioritize my peace, my health, my time, my value, and what it is that I want deeply, and to listen. I hadn't been listening to my inner voice. I'd been doing, I was all out, front facing. I'll do that. And being a very optimistic, outgoing person, it fit. It was like, no problem. I can do it all. Here we go. Mom, actor, producer. I love saying busy. That's one thing that all my friends say. You need to sit down. But I love being busy. I enjoy it. I'm sure that there's some level of anxiety of not being busy with me that I'm exercising, but I love it. But what the quarantine did for me is it forced me to sit with my feelings, to sit with what was important to me, what wasn't important to me, to let go of relationships that were toxic, to let go of experiences that were draining. And I just prioritized my mental health, my physical health, my spiritual health. And it almost like cleaned my glasses. I got to see areas in my life that I had been saying, oh, one day I'm going to do that. I'll save that for later. I had the time to do it, and I did it. And in the moment, I was able to realize that producing is something I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to be a boss. And you know what, Harriette? I'm good at it.
Yay. So, and Topdog Underdog, is that your debut?
Yes, it is.
As a producer.
Underdog is my Broadway producing debut. And I could not be more proud of any show.
It's powerful.
It's fantastic. Powerful. It's fantastic. And we were very fortunate because Susan Laurie Parks, the brilliant Susan Laurie Parks, and Kenny Leon, they were the dynamic duo together.
Yes.
The director and the writer. They were like symbiotic. They were standing next to each other. She was in every rehearsal. She was there listening. And then the actors, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II and Corey Hawkins, they were open to listen to what Kenny had to say, listen to Susan Laurie's words in a different way that impacted them today, because it's 20 years later.
Yes.
And then Kenny and our sign designer at Justin Ellington, who was brilliant, added a soundtrack to the show that just sets the tone for what you're about to experience. And it's pretty special. So I'm very proud that Topdog is my debut. And I'm extremely proud of Kimberly Akimbo as the musical.
I mean, and two at the same time. That's pretty awesome, right?
Well, my mentor, David Stone, who is the lead producer. I am a co-producer, the lead producer on both of the projects. He invited me on. He told me during COVID that, there's something that I see in you. He said, you're a producer and I want to teach you the business. So during COVID, I would go and sit outside his home and learn the business of commercial Broadway producing.
So what does that mean? Because a lot of folks hear the term producer and producer, I'm not sure if it means the same thing on Broadway as it does for television and film. What does it mean for Broadway?
there are different types of producers. First of all, you have a lead producer. This is the main person who has acquired the piece, hires the creative team, finds the space to produce it. Then that person arms themselves with additional producers who will then become responsible fiscally for raising the money. That's like the number one thing. You have to raise the money.
Right.
And then there are creative producers, which I am both of. I'm also a financial producer and a creative producer. So I sit in on all the ad meetings, the marketing meetings. I go to the rehearsals. I support the cast. And one of the benefits of being an actor as well as a producer is the cast knows that I can advocate on behalf of the actors. And they know that I can be sort of a liaison between the producer, the creative team, and the actor, which is a unique position to be in. But I find it to be a really wonderful confluence of my skills. And also adding being a mother. Mothers are producers.
There's no question
Mothers
about that.
Some of the best producers in the world. We know how to do 5 things at once and get those kids out the door and do our work, make sure that dinner's on table when we get home, pay the bills. We do it all. And that's what producers have to do. We have to have our minds and our thoughts and our images on all different things. And also knowing, but you never really know if a show is going to be a hit or a flop. But if you're a good producer, you have an idea of the just sort of the history of theater and what makes it a show successful. And you, with the experience, what makes a show interesting enough to want to continue to attend, and what makes a show important. Not every production, whether it be film, television, or theater, is important. Sometimes it's just fun and entertaining.
Well, okay, so let me ask you about that, because for folks who don't know, I'd like for you to tell us what is Topdog, Underdog about. And as you shared, this is the 20th anniversary.
Yes.
And the story is hauntingly real, like it was written yesterday. So can you just tell us the storyline?
Yes, it's a story about 2 brothers that were abandoned by their parents at a young age. And it's basically just about their relationship, how they're struggling young men in the world trying to support each other, trying to survive. And they are the game that the street hustle that they've worked on and sort of perfected is the 3-card Monte. So it's all about a younger brother's ambition to be like the other brother who has found the 3-card Monte to not be the best way to go about being successful. And so you see the conflict, you see the struggle, and it's so multi-layered and multifaceted that we all can identify with the relationship that the brothers have. We see it, we identify with it, we understand it. And the fact that they're named Lincoln and Booth implies that there is another layer of the relationship that is revealed in the storytelling. It's extremely well written, and the performance in Corey Hawkins and Yaya, they're just incredibly, the chemistry and the commitment to what they're doing on that stage is unparalleled. I personally think it's the best show in town, and I'm not just saying that, but I personally
so moving. I mean, it hits you at a heart level, at a gut level. It really does. And what's amazing to me just simply is that it's 20 years old, and it's one of those that's a classic, because it's just as real today for all the right and wrong reasons, just in terms of the stories of our lives. I'd like to ask you something else that is pivotal now. So I think we're going to always be in this world of pre-COVID and post-COVID, because everything changed with COVID, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things that people have been agitating for a long time is looking at Broadway and making it more equitable. And I've done some work with the Broadway League where they're like, wait, no, we got to do better. We have to figure out how to do better. And you are part of an organization that really has blossomed under COVID, that is making people step up and step right.
Yeah.
And as this season opened, as Broadway reopened, it opened with 7 Black plays, which was historic. I know, LaChanze, there were people there were pros and cons about that. Oh, so you're gonna make the Black people open it up, and when hardly people are still afraid to go to Broadway. So if we fail, is there a reason? There were so many things that came up, pros and cons about what has occurred, but we do see more Black productions, more Black people on stage and behind the scenes. Can you talk about the work that you are doing and what impact it's having?
Sure. So I'm the president of an organization called Black Theater United,
Yes.
and we're a little over 2 years old.
Right.
We formed on January 6, 2020, after the horrific murder of George Floyd. It all started with a tweet that I put out. I've been in this commercial theater industry for close to 40 years, and I found while everyone was making statements, Fortune 500 companies were making statements, speaking out against this bias against Black people and Black bodies, and my industry was surprisingly quiet. So I tweeted about it, my disappointment in my community for not taking any kind of stance. Audra McDonald saw that tweet. It went kind of viral. She called me and she said, "We have to do something." And I said, "I know, but what can we do?" She said, "Let's call all of our fancy friends, get together on a Zoom tonight and figure out what we can do." And Black Theater United was formed. We have 19 founders. Billy Porter, Phyllis Rashad was an original founder, Anna DeVere Smith, Audra McDonald, myself, Norm Lewis, Wendell Pierce, Tamara Tooney, Allison Tucker Mitchell. I'm thinking Natasha Williams, Karen Ford, Lisa Dawn Cave, Michael McElroy. I'm just saying the names that
these are names. If you don't know who these names are that LaChanze is saying, look them up. These are all bold-faced names in the theater community among Black folk, right?
Yes, Darius Tahas, so many of us. And I'm sure I'm blanking on a name in this moment, but on our website, blacktheaterunited.com, you can see everyone. And we all got together and we said, what can we do? So we started hosting, we became a 501c3. We started hosting series of town halls. Our first one was with Stacey Abrams and Viola Davis. Viola Davis was our moderator to talk about what we can do as a community of Black people. And then in the process of all of this happening, we started getting huge allyship. So then our community came and joined us, our allies, our theater owners, our producers, our directors, our casting agents. And we decided that we should take this a step further. So we spent 6 months of what we call the summit. And we created something called the New Deal for Broadway. And what it basically is a document, and it lives on our website, of the commitment that we would like to see done in theater, in commercial theater and beyond, which reduces biases that we all have, which will create more inclusive environments off stage and beyond. And the document has so many signatories with people who've agreed to what this new constitution, if you will, for theater, our New Deal. And we are now in the process of creating a training an anti-bias training that every theater professional will have to take before going into theatrical space. All of us, the writers, the directors, the actors, the producers. And we're also hoping to create this training that can be then applied to other industries outside of the commercial theater. So we're creating that training right now, and we're excited about it.
That's very exciting. And, going from a tweet to such action, such united action is powerful. And the time is now. And the fact that it is happening is very exciting. So thank you for doing that work. I mean, that's a whole nother job.
Yes. Woo! Lord, you have no idea. But actually, you do know.
I do. I understand. I really do understand. And we are all grateful for it. And I do feel like this season, this year of Broadway has been more diverse.
Yes.
It really has. And I think everyone benefits because of that. It is good for us all.
Yes.
I want to go back to a performance that I saw. I think it was in 21, Trouble in Mind.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. So powerful. And could you tell us what is Trouble in Mind about and your role in that performance?
Trouble in Mind is a play that was written by Alice Childress, the late great
Yes.
Alice Childress. The play was written in 1957, and it had an off-Broadway run. But when it was time to transfer it to Broadway, the producers in the 50s wanted her to change the ending to make the white male protagonist more likable. And she refused. She said, "This is my experience." And this experience that she was having, the story takes place in a theater. It's the story of an actress in her midlife, finally having an opportunity to do a play that was relevant and have her break on Broadway. And It takes place all in the span of a rehearsal of a day. And the conflict is the white male director and the white male writers and producers are writing this script for Black actors. And it's an anti-lynching story. And the character that I played, Willetta, challenges the authority and pretty much explains why some of these stereotypes cannot continue and what's wrong with them. And there's a huge confrontation with the character Willetta and the director towards the second act that exposes the types of stereotypes that Black people were having in the 50s. Ironically, 66 years later, the Roundabout Theater Company had the foresight to produce it in its original text, which did not make the white male protagonist likable. It made him who he was, human.
Right.
We received huge reviews and acknowledgement, and people just love the play so much. I got a Tony nomination. It was just great.
No, well, as you should have. I mean, and what's amazing, going back to when the writing is great, then it's so it lays the foundation for a beautiful production, right?
Yes,
and the thing that gives me goosebumps, even as I'm remembering it, is what you said. Alice Childress wrote this in 1955.
Yes.
It was 2021 when this was on Broadway, and you would think that it was yesterday. The issues still exist. And while there are, just to be fair, there have been gains made. For sure. But those injustices, those little injustices and stereotypical lens through which some people look also still exist.
Yes, and the microaggressors that we deal with regularly as Black people, it's definitely something that we're still working towards. But I believe that if we, as a community of Black people, are in more leadership positions, then the Titanic will shift. And that's where I see the change happening, which is why I am working so hard to stay in a leadership position, because I feel that this is where I'm needed. I'm of the age that I've experienced so much. I've been fortunate enough to experience so much in my professional and performance career that I have something to glean and share for those that are now coming. And I think that's a part of my responsibility as an artist, my responsibility as a woman, my responsibility as a Black woman in a position like this is to continue to educate, to inspire, to inform, and to lead. Leading, more importantly, is lead. We need people to not be afraid to be leaders and teachers and educators, because that's what we're leaving. We're leaving our legacy to our younger Black. And I will say, though, that the generation that my daughters are in, they are coming out guns blazing. They are unapologetic. They are out here saying what they want, going after what they need with such ferocity. And I'm so proud to see it. I just want them, if I can ask for one little thing, is to prepare a little bit more. Get the knowledge, get the experience before you speak about what you know and do. Get the knowledge first, The voice becomes so much more powerful when it's fueled by knowledge. There's no question about that.
Now, you've mentioned your daughters, and one of your daughters, the two of you were on Broadway at the same time. Is that right?
Yes, we were.
Tell us that.
So my daughter Celia, my oldest daughter, followed in my footsteps. She is an actor. I tell people all the time, I'm a star. My daughter's a superstar. So her first job out of high school was a Broadway show, and she got a Tony nomination, and it just happened to be the same season that I was on Broadway doing a play, Christmas Carol. Right. And so we were essentially the first Black mother and daughter leading on Broadway in the same season. Wow. There have been several mother and daughter combinations, in like one working as an ensemble member, one working as a lead, but two leading actresses on Broadway at the same season.
That is so exciting. And what does your other daughter do?
She's a linguistics major. She speaks She speaks 3 fluent languages fluently, one being Japanese, and she's in Japan right now, finishing college.
Wow, that's fantastic. Mm-hmm. So, LaChanze, what advice do you have? You gave some already, but for folks who are standing at the precipice, they've got dreams and they're not quite sure, what do I do next? What advice do you have for folks to step out there to make their dreams manifest?
Well, if you can see it, the first thing I'll say is if you can see it, then it's for you. Mm. Because I believe that vision is divinely inspired. And I do not see myself doing neurosurgery for babies. I just don't see myself doing that. But I see myself as a producer and creating space for other artists coming up behind me. My advice would be, if you see it, you can attain it. Stay the course. Do not listen to naysayers. Oh, and do not compare yourself to someone next to you. My entire career, people have compared me to Audra McDonald. And I have said a million times, while she is my friend, Audra and I have such separate journeys. And we can't have 2 LaChanzes or 2 Audras. We need an Audra and a LaChanze. And I tell people, these kids all the time, well, I want to be like Beyonce. We already have Beyonce.
Right.
Now we need you. So my advice would be to focus on the thing that brings you the most joy, that isn't hard. People always think that it's got to be hard what you're doing. Not necessarily. Roses don't fight to grow. Daisies don't fight to grow. It's what you do naturally. You already have been given the tools and skills that you need to do what it is that you need to achieve in life. So my advice would be to focus on what it is that you enjoy doing and work on that until you're where you want to be.
And, for some folks who have fear, well, I might not be able to afford it. How can I afford it if I don't have the resources? And I would say, given the career that you've chosen, a whole lot of people don't make money for a long time when they're working to be a performer. But you did it. So how did you make it work in those early days?
I had side jobs. I did a variety of things. I worked as a coat check girl in a restaurant. I actually even sold cemetery plots. I was a telemarketer who sold cemetery plots. And you want to hear the funniest thing? Our slogan was, "We're the last ones to let you down." That was a fun job. I've done voiceover work. I've done anything that would keep me able to finance what I'm doing and still focus on my work. I studied quite a bit. I continue to study. I continue to read and learn and connect with people, because I think that we never stop until we're our bodies, until we transition. We never stop. Mm-hmm. And we should never stop. And we should always keep going. I've lived so many lives, I feel, and I still have a few more to go.
I think that when we think about the path ahead and the stumbling blocks that occur, because people have them all the time, it's what do you do when times are tough? What advice can you give folks for what they should do, what they can do when it feels too hard?
When it feels too hard, and it can feel too hard quite a bit, that's when you pause. You for me, when I'm feeling, I need to breathe. I need to sit. I need to breathe. And I journal as well. And I also write down what I'm feeling. I think what happens when things feel too hard, you have to remember it's a feeling. And this is advice I would give my daughters when they were struggling with different challenges, is that you're sad right now, but in a little while you won't be. That feeling doesn't last. It's just like laughing. If you laugh and you're cracking up laughing, that dissipates after a while. Feelings are not permanent, and they don't last. And you cannot let the feeling control you. It's just your feeling. And understand that it's a feeling. Feel it. Feel sad, feel discouraged, feel disappointed, and then get up, wash your face, and go drink a glass of water and get to work.
Get to work. I love it. LaChanze, thank you so very much for spending time with us. This has been delightful, and I want everybody, go see Topdog, Underdog. Go see Kimberly Akimbo. You see LaChanze's work right there on stage right now. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful to be with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
And everyone, thank you for listening to one more great moment of Dreamleapers. Until next time, have a great day and make it count.